I slammed the gavel down on the judge's bench that wasn't mine, the echo ripping through the courtroom like a gunshot in a confessional. Guilty. I barked at my own reflection in the polished wood, my voice cracking the silence I'd buried for 15 years. And just like that, I confessed to the crime that sent me to hell, except it wasn't me who pulled the trigger. It was the woman who'd birthed me, and she'd made damn sure I'd take the fall. The rain hammered the roof of our old Craftsman in Evanston, Illinois, like it was trying to wash away the sins we'd all pretended weren't there. It was the fall of 2010, and I was 25, fresh out of community college with a welding certificate and dreams of flipping houses in the North Shore suburbs. Mom, Eleanor Monroe, though everyone called her Ellie, had always been the queen of our little kingdom. Dad split when I was 6, leaving her with me and my sister Lila, and a mountain of credit card debt from his poker nights. Ellie turned that bitterness into fuel. She waitress doubles at the local diner, then clawed her way into real estate by schmoozing every developer from Chicago to Milwaukee. By the time I was in high school, we had the house, the SUV, the annual trip to Door County. But power like that? It twists you. Ellie's deals weren't just handshakes. They were knives in the dark. Lila was the golden child, 2 years younger, with Mom's sharp cheekbones and a laugh that could disarm a room. She was studying pre-law at Northwestern on a full ride, interning at some fancy firm downtown. Me? I was the muscle, the fixer. Monroe, she'd say, clapping my shoulder after a long day, you're the backbone of this family. I'd nod, wipe the grease from my hands, and believe it, until the night everything shattered. It started with a tip from one of Ellie's clients, a sleazy contractor named Vince Russo, who flipped foreclosures into McMansions for tech bros fleeing the city. Vince had a side hustle, insurance scams. He'd torch a property just enough to collect the payout, then rebuild on the cheap. Ellie knew. Hell, she brokered the deals that made it possible. But one night in late September, Vince called her panicked. His latest flip, a Victorian in Rogers Park, had gone up too hot. Arson investigators were sniffing around, and the owner, an old widow named Mrs. Hargrove, had died in the blaze. Accidental, Vince swore, but the cops weren't buying it. Monroe, Ellie said that night, her voice a razor over the phone as I drove home from a night shift at the steel yard. I need you to do something for me. For us. I pulled over on Lakeshore Drive, the city lights blurring through the windshield wipers. She laid it out. Plant evidence pointing away from Vince. A rival crew, maybe. Something to muddy the waters. It's just a favor, baby. Like when you fixed that leak for Aunt June without asking. I should have hung up. But family, right? Blood thicker than the Lake Michigan slush. So I did it. Broke into the site at 2 a.m., doused some rags and accelerant from a can I'd borrowed from work, left them near a window like some sloppy saboteur had botched their own fire. Thought it was theater. Thought it'd buy time for the real investigation to fizzle. 2 weeks later, the feds kicked in our door at dawn. ATF badges flashing, warrants screaming arson and manslaughter. They dragged me out in boxers, neighbors peeking through curtains like vultures. Ellie and Lila watched from the porch, her arm around my sister's shoulders. It'll be okay, Monroe, Ellie whispered as they cuffed me. We'll get you the best lawyer. Lila just stared, eyes wide, like I'd turned into a stranger. The trial was a circus. Federal court in downtown Chicago, wood-paneled and echoing with the ghosts of Al Capone. My public defender was a kid fresh out of DePaul, buried under caseloads. Prosecutors painted me as the fall guy for a syndicate, greedy welder with a chip on his shoulder, burning down dreams for a quick buck. Evidence? My prints on the can, tire tracks from my truck, a burner phone pinging towers near the site. I took the plea. 20 years. Eligible for parole in 15. Manslaughter, they called it. Ellie testified as a character witness, tears streaming, swearing I'd never hurt a fly. He's a good boy, she sobbed. Just lost his way. The jury bought it. Judge banged the gavel, and I was gone. ADX Florence. Supermax in the Colorado desert. They call it the Alcatraz of the Rockies for a reason. Concrete tombs, 23 hours a day in the hole, if you twitch wrong. I learned Spanish from the cartels, chess from the lifers, and hate from the mirror. Letters from home dried up after year 2. Lila sent one once. We miss you. Mom's expanding the business. Stay strong. Ellie? Radio silence. Paroled in 2025, early for good behavior, and a bleeding heart review board. The world outside was smartphones and TikTok, but the rage? That was vintage 10. I hit Chicago on a Greyhound, duffel bag over my shoulder, $200 gate money burning a hole. First stop, the old house in Evanston. Sold, of course. Flipped into some soulless open-plan McMansion. But Ellie? Still in the game. A quick search on my library computer, Zillow, LinkedIn, showed her as CEO of Monroe Properties, a boutique firm specializing in distressed assets. Lila? District Attorney for Cook County, rising star, all glossy headshots and TED Talks on restorative justice. The betrayal hit like a shiv to the gut. Not just the silence. It was the secret they'd buried under my bones. I'd known Vince was dirty, but during those Supermax nights, whispers from a guard who'd transferred from Chicago PD filled in the blanks. The fire? Vince's torch job, sure. But Ellie was there that night. Her SUV spotted on CCTV, pulling away as flames licked the siding. Mrs. Hargrove wasn't collateral. She was the target. The widow had evidence, ledgers, emails, proving Ellie and Vince had forged her signature on a reverse mortgage, bleeding her dry before the blaze. Ellie didn't just know. She lit the match. And me? The patsy. The son who took the heat so Mom could build an empire on ash. I didn't go home. Crashed at a flop house in Pilsen, the kind with roaches the size of fists and walls thin as whispers. Days blurred into reconnaissance. I tailed Ellie from her office on Michigan Avenue. Tailored suits, coffee runs to intelligentsia, lunches at RPM Steak with developers who reeked of cologne and corruption. Lila? Court appearances, fundraisers at the Palmer House, her laugh echoing like it used to at family barbecues. The plan simmered. Revenge isn't a sprint. It's a slow bleed. I started small. Anonymous tips to the Sun-Times. Monroe Properties, Phoenix from the flames? They bid, ran a fluff piece on Ellie's rags to riches but with a sidebar on the 2010 fire. Enough to make her sweat. Then Lila. I hacked her calendar, nothing fancy, just a phishing email from a colleague at the DA's office, password weak as her conscience. Booked her for a deposition in a ghost case, no-show that tanked her prep for a big racketeering bust. She raged on LinkedIn. Bureaucracy at its worst. I smiled in the dark. But the real hook? Thanksgiving. Ellie's annual tradition, black tie affair at the Evanston house. Irony thick as gravy. Invites to power players, aldermen, brokers, that snake Vince, now semi-retired and golfing in Scottsdale. Lila hosting, of course. I RSVP'd as M. Harlan, a fictional investor from Milwaukee. Paid a guy from the halfway house $50 to courier the card. The night arrived, November 27th, 2025. Snow flurried outside, the kind that sticks and silences the world. I pulled up in a rented Impala, black suit from the Goodwill rack tailored just enough. Heart pounding like a jackhammer. But my face? Cool as the Windy City winter. The foyer smelled of rosemary and bourbon, crystal clinking like wind chimes in a hurricane. Lila greeted at the door, all pearls and poise. Mr. Harlan? Welcome. I'm Lila Monroe. Her eyes narrowed a fraction, something familiar. But she waved me in. The dining room was a stage, 20-foot table groaning under crystal, silver, a butterball turkey carved to perfection. Ellie at the head, resplendent in emerald silk, toasting to new beginnings and old flames. Guests murmured approval. Vince at her right, paunchier but smug, swirling scotch. I took a seat midway down, nodding at a councilman who mistook me for someone important. Small talk flowed. Real estate bubbles, Bears slim playoff chances. Then Ellie rose, glass raised. To family, she said, eyes scanning the room. The ones who carry us through fire. Lila chimed in, voice honeyed. And to justice, served hot or cold. Laughter rippled. My cue. I stood, slow, deliberate, letting the chair scrape like nails on a chalkboard. All eyes turned. Fire, I echoed, voice low, steady. Funny how it purifies some things. Incinerates others. Ellie froze, glass halfway to her lips. Lila's fork clattered. Vince choked on his Merlot. Who the hell are you? Vince sputtered, dabbing his chin with a napkin monogrammed EMP. Ellie Monroe Properties. I locked eyes, with Ellie first. Her face drained to the color of the linen, but those green eyes?
Steel.
Calculating. Monroe? She whispered, the name a ghost slipping from her lips. The room held its breath, silverware suspended, the only sound the distant tick of a grandfather clock counting down to detonation. I smiled, thin and sharp as a switchblade. It's me, Mom. Back from the dead. Or, did you forget the son you buried alive? Gasps rippled like aftershocks. The councilman bolted for the powder room. A socialite in sequins clutched her pearls like a rosary. Lila surged to her feet, chair toppling. This is a sick joke. Security. But I was ready. From my jacket pocket, I pulled the envelope, manila, sealed with wax like some Victorian indictment. Held it aloft, letting the lamplight catch the embossed seal. Chicago PD Archives. Before you call the cops, Lila, Assistant State's Attorney, maybe hear the prodigal son out. Or should I say, the scapegoat. Ellie sank back into her seat, knuckles white on the tablecloth. Monroe.
Sit down.
This isn't the place. Oh, but it is, I said, voice carrying like a sermon in a megachurch. This table? It's always been the altar where we sacrificed the weak for the strong. Remember Thanksgiving '09? You carving the bird, promising we'd make it big. Me, believing every word. Lila, passing the rolls like nothing was coming. I circled the table slow, a shark in wingtips, guests parting like the Red Sea. Vince shifted, eyes darting to his phone, probably speed-dialing a fixer. Kid, he growled. Whatever beef you got, take it outside. This ain't the night. I paused behind him, close enough to smell his aftershave. Old Spice, cheap as his conscience.
Vince Russo.
Arson for hire. You torched Mrs. Hargrove's place for a payout. But it was Ellie who held the match. And me? I took the rap so you two could build this empire on her grandma's bones. The room erupted, murmurs swelling to a roar. A broker in a bow tie stood, sputtering. Ellie, what the hell? Lila lunged for the envelope, but I sidestepped, slapping it down in front of Mom. Open it. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside, photocopies. The CCTV still, her SUV fleeing the scene, plates blurred but unmistakable. Hargrove's mortgage docs, signatures forged in Ellie's elegant script. And the kicker, a sworn affidavit from that PD guard, dated last month, detailing the frame job. How, she breathed, pages fluttering like dying birds. Parole perks, I said. Time to read up on the family business. Lila snatched a page, scanning furious. This is fabricated. Mom, tell them. Ellie looked up, not at her daughter, but at me. Something cracked in her gaze. Regret? Or calculation? I did what I had to, she said, voice steady now, rising like a closing argument. You were disposable, Monroe. A welder with no future. Lila had law school. I had dreams. One fire, one lie, and we'd all be free. The words landed like buckshot. Guests recoiled, some nodding, others fleeing for the foyer. Vince bolted too, but I blocked his path, grabbing his wrist just hard enough to twist. Going somewhere, Uncle Vinny? Flight to Scottsdale canceled. I tipped the feds this morning. Enjoy the Supermax view. He wrenched free, face purple. You little shit. She made you. And you repay with this. Ellie stood then, commanding the chaos. Enough. Her voice sliced through, the diner waitress reborn as Dragon Lady. Monroe, you want revenge?
Fine.
But look around. This table? It's not just blood. It's legacy. You sat here once, begging for scraps. Now you crash the feast like a beggar with a grudge. The room split, half edging toward the door, half transfixed, phones slyly recording. Lila circled me, eyes blazing. You're the one who did it, Monroe. Planted the evidence.
Took the plea.
Mom protected you, lawyered up, visited every week. Liar. I snarled. First crack in my armor. Visits? 1 in 15 years. And that plea? Coerced by your firm's threats. Remember pro bono project?
Yeah, Ido.
You buried the appeal. She flinched, just a hair, but it was enough. The golden child, tarnished. Ellie seized the moment, turning to the stragglers. Ladies and gentlemen, my son, my wayward son, has returned with tales from the abyss. But family secrets? They bind us tighter than any chain. She raised her glass again, defiant. To Monroe. May he find his seat. Or forge his own. A smattering of awkward clinks. Stockholm Syndrome, Chicago style. Some bought her spin. The tragic matriarch, the prodigal punk. Others whispered lawsuit and front-page scandal. But I wasn't done. The move, the one that'd leave them speechless. I pulled the chair at the foot of the table, opposite Ellie, and sat. Not with a crash, but deliberate, napkin unfolding like a white flag of war. I'm here, Mom. For dessert. And the truth. Silence fell, thicker than fog off the lake. Lila hovered, torn, prosecutor instinct warring with sisterly doubt. Vince hovered by the French doors, trapped rabbit. Ellie stared me down, a queen assessing a usurper. Then, the twist of the knife. I leaned forward, voice intimate, for her ears only. I didn't come alone. The feds? They're outside. But the real bomb? It's you, Lila. That racketeering case you're prepping? Half the defendants are Mom's clients. You knew. Buried the conflicts to climb the ladder. Her face crumpled. Betrayal's mirror.
Monroe, no.
Yes, I said louder now. I have the emails. Your signature on the redaction requests. Family first, right? The room detonated. Phones whipped out, flashes popping like gunfire. Ellie lunged across the table, grabbing my lapels. You destroy us all, you selfish. I held her gaze, unflinching.
No, Mom.
I free us. Sirens wailed distant, closing in. Guests stampeded, coats grabbed, heels clattering on hardwood. Vince shoved past, a final glare. You'll rot for this, kid. Lila sank to her seat, head in hands. Ellie released me, straightening her dress like armor. Get out, she hissed, before I make you disappear again. But I stayed planted, carving a slice of pie with surgical calm. Pass the whipped cream, sis. It's time we all ate what we baked. The first cop through the door was Ramirez, the guard for my letters, now detective, badge gleaming. Monroe Harlan?
No, Monroe Wegis.
You're under arrest. For the 2010 arson. He cuffed me loose, a wink hidden in the ritual. But first, statements from the witnesses. Ellie gaped. What? Frames flipped, I said, standing. Vince confessed this afternoon. Immunity for the real players. You and Lila? Indicted by dawn. The room spun into frenzy, accusations flying, alliances shattering. A developer screamed betrayal. The socialite live-tweeted the takedown. Lila bolted for the kitchen, retching. Ellie? She laughed, bitter and broken. My son, the monster I made. As they led me out, not to a cell, but to a safe house, I glanced back. The table, once throne, now battlefield, plates overturned, wine pooling like blood. But revenge? It tastes like ash. And in that moment, I wondered if I'd saved us. Or damned us all. No, that was just intermission. The real storm brewed in the fallout, the pleas, the packs we'd forge in the wreckage. The safe house smelled of stale takeout and fresh betrayal, a walk-up in Wicker Park, blinds drawn against a paparazzi glare. Ramirez uncuffed me at the kitchenette table, a Formica relic scarred like my knuckles. Coffee, he offered, pouring from a pot that gurgled like a guilty conscience. Black, I said, rubbing wrists raw from the show. Vince really sing? He slid the mug over, nodding. Like Sinatra on payday. Rolled over on Ellie an hour after you tipped us. The widow's docs?
Gold.
Forgery, arson, conspiracy. Lila's in deeper than she knows, obstruction at minimum, accessory if we push. I sipped, bitter as the truth. And Mom? She's lawyering up as we speak. Firm's the same one that buried your appeal. Irony, huh? He chuckled, but his eyes were cop-hard. You walk on this, Monroe. Immunity for the frame testimony. But the move at dinner?
Ballsy.
Front page tomorrow. Prodigal son serves justice with pumpkin pie. I laughed hollow. Walk. After 15 years caged, freedom felt like quicksand. The headlines would canonize me. A folk hero, the betrayed brother flipping the script on corrupt queens. But the comments? Snitch. Family wrecker. Karma's bitch. America loves a redemption arc until it hits too close. Dawn broke gray, snow turning to slush under sodium lights. My phone, burner, courtesy of Ramirez, buzzed with voicemails. First, Lila, voice shattered. Monroe, how could you? I visited. I wrote.
Mom.
She broke after you left. Pills, therapy. We rebuilt without you because we had to survive.
Click.
Then Ellie, steel wrapped in silk. You think this ends us? I made you, boy. From nothing. This? Just another flip. Call off the dogs, or I'll drag your name through every tabloid from here to LA. You're still the arsonist in their eyes. I deleted them, heart a fist in my chest. Survive? They'd thrived on my grave. The arraignment was a media circus. Federal courthouse, loop traffic gridlocked by news vans. Ellie and Lila, side by side in the dock, a tableau of fallen angels. Mom in Chanel, chin high, Lila in wool crepe, eyes red-rimmed. Vince already plea bargained, testifying for the prosecution like a rat in a three-piece. The judge, a grizzled vet named Kowalski, banged order as cameras flashed. Ms. Monroe, Ms. Ellis. Charges, fraud, arson resulting in death, obstruction of justice. How do you plead? Not guilty, they chorused, voices entwined like kudzu. My turn, witness stand, sworn in under the eagle's glare. I laid it out cold. The call from Ellie, the planted evidence, the supermax solitude. They sacrifice me, I said, voice steady, for a real estate empire built on lies. Cross-exam. Ellie Shark, a silver fox from Sidley Austin, Torin. Mr. Ellis, you committed the act. Prince, tracks yours. And this affidavit? From a disgraced officer with a grudge. Grudge. I leaned forward. 15 years for a crime I didn't commit. That's not grudge. That's gospel. The jury shifted, blue-collar types from the suburbs, faces etched with their own quiet desperations. Did they see a hero? Or a vengeful ghost? Lila's testimony gutted me. She took the stand, composed, reciting Miranda like scripture. Monroe was always troubled. Petty theft in high school, bar fights. Mom asked him for help that night. A simple errand. He escalated. We covered because he's family. Tears artful. I buried files to protect victims, not perpetrators. My brother's return? It's poisoned him.
Poisoned.
The word lingered, a barb in the courtroom hush. Ellie followed, a masterclass in deflection. I built Monroe properties from ashes, literal and figurative. The fire? A tragedy. My son? A boy who strayed. I took the blame in my heart every day. She met my eyes, a flicker of something raw. But he was never innocent. The prosecution rested on Vince's tape, grainy audio of him and Ellie plotting the torch job, my name dropped casual as a grocery list. Kid's reliable. Takes the heat like a champ. Deliberations stretched 2 days. I holed up in the safe house, chain-smoking camels, CNN, looping the drama. Thanksgiving takedown, DA dynasty in flames. Pundit split. Fox called me a vigilante saint. MSNBC a chaotic enabler. Social media? A war zone. Monroe revenge trended, memes of me as the Punisher slicing turkey. Verdict dropped like a guillotine. Guilty. All counts. Ellie and Lila. 20 years apiece. Concurrent. No parole first 5. Vince. 10 with time served. Outside, as they led them away, Ellie stone-faced, Lila sobbing, I waited in the shadow of the Picasso sculpture.
No gloating.
Just a nod from Ramirez. You did it, kid.
Did I?
The drive back to Evanston was a blur, wipers slapping rhythm. The house, repossessed, dark, loomed like a tomb. I jimmied the lock, stepped into the echo. Dining room empty, table cleared, but ghosts lingered, the scrape of chairs, the shatter of illusions. A knock shattered the quiet. Lila, somehow bailed pending appeal, flanked by goons in ill-fitting suits. Monroe, she said, voice a whip. We need to talk. Inside, under the chandelier's cold gleam, she paced. You happy? Mom's broken. The firm seized. I lose everything, career, bar license. Her eyes blazed. But you? Walking free on technicalities. Hero of the hour. Not free, I said, sinking into Ellie's old chair. Caged by what I did. Or didn't. She stopped, close enough to strike. What if I told you? It was me? The call that night? Mom was drunk, passed out. I forged the docs, lit the match. Vince covered for me. Thought it was her idea. You took the fall thinking it was family duty. The room tilted. Twist sharper than a shank. You? To protect her. She was spiraling. Debts. Dad's ghost. I was 17. Lila the savior. One fire and we'd reset.
Tears now real.
Mom found out later. Framed you deeper to shield us both. Said you were expendable muscle.
But I
let it happen. Rage boiled, then ebbed to ice. Not Ellie the monster, but us all, a hydra of half-truths. Why tell me now? Because you're the only one left. She slid a key across the table to a safety deposit box. Evidence. The real ledgers. Burn them or use them. End it. I pocketed it, the weight of worlds. What then? She shrugged, defeated. We rebuild. Or we don't. But that seat at the table? It's always been a lie. She left, shadows swallowing her. I sat till dawn, key burning my palm. Burn the past? Or ignite a new blaze? Months later, Monroe Properties rose from the ashes. My name now, flipping distressed, homes legit, scholarships for kids like teen me. Ellie wrote from Alderson. Proud, in spite of. Lila? Disbarred, but running a non-profit for exonerees.
Me?
I host Thanksgiving now. Empty chairs a reminder. But the debate rages in bars and feeds. Was I avenger or arsonist? Savior or saboteur? No heroes here, just Monroes, bleeding our own. And that one move. Sitting down. Claiming my seat. Leaving them speechless in the ruins. Sometimes, revenge isn't the kill. It's the mirror you force them to face. And in America's Funhouse, we all look like monsters.